Well, just minutes before the attack, the suspect in the El Paso shooting allegedly published an anti-immigrant essay on 8chan, following in the footsteps of other recent attacks like the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and the attack on the mosque in New Zealand. Now, in response on Friday, the White House is hosting tech companies to talk about the rise of violent extremism online. NBC's Ben Collins has been following this story. So, Ben, do we know who's going to be there, who's been invited, and maybe who's not?
Sure. We know that they've invited the big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, Google, and stuff. We don't know if they're going. And that's the thing. Like, this is in 24 hours. We don't know what's going to happen as of yet. And no one has responded. Twitter hasn't responded. Facebook hasn't responded to the press. So if they show up, we don't know what's going to happen. The other thing is, we don't know if the president's going to be there. He has 2 events lined up.
Big plans in the Hamptons tomorrow.
Exactly. Right? He's going to go talk to some donors for $250,000 a plate. So he can't cancel that thing. He might not be at the White House for this thing either. And the truth is, the bigger question here is, how are they going to protect all these, try to protect people from the worst parts of the internet while simultaneously going down this other rabbit hole with an executive order they're about to put out, saying that, these companies can't ban anybody in these websites.
Yeah, so let's talk, too, about that executive order. For those of our viewers who aren't familiar with it, can you tell us a little bit about it and sort of how this plays a part? Sure.
There, from numerous reports say there are a bunch of sort of sample draft executive orders going around saying that, Facebook and Twitter are, in the future, might not be able to ban people from their platforms. Now, what does that mean if it's written poorly? That means that 8chan has to leave up that manifesto, that Facebook has to leave up a shooter going into a mosque and killing a bunch of people. So if this is drafted poorly, which from what we can tell, what their belief in the free speech on these platforms is, they mean free speech. They mean complete, just absolute anarchism, or anarchy. Let's get the words right first. Then these two things, they don't run parallel to each other, and they're about to talk about, again, it just doesn't make any sense. The cognitive dissonance here is profound.
Now, is that the objective of that executive order, to let people say whatever they want, or sounds like it's something that the Republicans are, looking to get out there because they feel like social media sites are against conservatives?
Yeah. So this has been a long-running thing by a group of people who really have a vested interest, moneyed interest in this thing. So, for example, do you remember this thing called Clinton Cash?
Yeah.
Okay, so Clinton Cash was a thing made by the people who do Breitbart. Okay. It's funded by the Mercers who fund Breitbart. They made a thing for this election cycle, for 2018 really, for the midterms, called the Creepy Line, which is about how Google is banning all the conservatives, and it has not a lot of good data in it, I would say. Maybe no good data in it. Yet the president was harping on this the past couple of days. The findings in this movie is what he was talking about, and the point of it is to make it so people who with very far right positions, people like Alex Jones, for example, those people are allowed on Twitter and Facebook, so that every kind of speech is allowed on Twitter and Facebook. They believe that they are sort of overly censored, when in reality the data doesn't really back that up. Lots of things are censored. There's spam. There's do they want child trafficking on these sites? I don't think so.
Right.
So you have to let these companies do what they do. They just think that this has become political, when really the data doesn't back that up.
I know in the past there have been different kinds of tech events or tech forums at the White House. We've seen all the big execs from Google, Apple, Facebook. Those guys have been invited. Then more recently, we saw the White House host what really was more of a conservative social media platform. But it was definitely not the big players that most of us think of. Do we expect those groups to be invited tomorrow as well? Do we kind of have a real sense of sort of who's on the guest list?
That's the thing. We don't know.
We don't know. Okay.
There are hints, I guess. There's a website called Gab, where the synagogue shooter last year left his, he said, screw the optics, I'm going in. He posted on Gab after a bunch of conspiracy theories, and then went and shut up a synagogue. Eric Trump started following Gab today on Twitter. That's a hint. It's not a great hint. So we might get that sort of thing. We might get charlatans. We might get actual tech execs. We don't know yet, and we're going to find out tomorrow.
All right, Ben, it's going to be an interesting story on a summer Friday. Let's see who shows up.
Boy, here we go.
All right, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here. And click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.